Hi, this is Warren Redlich. There's been a lot of talk in the news lately about Roger Stone going to trial. There have been a lot of media reports about Roger Stone's trial, and a number of them suggest that Roger Stone faces a sentence of up to 20 years. One particular one, Rolling Stone magazine, suggested that Stone could get 20 years on one offense and then multiple 5-year sentences on other offenses related. And this seems really unlikely. So I want to go through the federal sentencing guidelines and show you how much time Roger Stone is likely to get. I think it's somewhere between 2 to 5 years, and I'll break that down for you. So, first thing to note is that Roger Stone, if you don't know who he is, he's a famous political consultant in many ways. He's also known for seeing himself as one of the best dressed men in America. You can judge for yourself whether you think his choice of hats or thong underwear indicate a best dressed man. That's a matter of personal taste. It's not my taste, but I'm not a particularly well dressed guy myself, so what do I know? He brags about being a political dirty trickster, political animal, and some people have referred to him as a rat fucker. This is a reference to all kinds of rotten things he and those like him have done over many years in politics, decades in politics, all kinds of dirty tricks. Some trace it back to Watergate and Richard Nixon. Stone himself brags about his affiliation with Richard Nixon. So let's get right into the federal sentencing guidelines. This is something that happens with anybody who's convicted of a federal offense, whether they take a deal or they're convicted at trial. There's a whole process that is followed to decide how much time is this person going to get. The guidelines give the judge a range in which he or she, in this case, is supposed to sentence the offender. The chart has columns which indicate your criminal history. This is one of the first things that you should know about Roger Stone, is to my knowledge, he has no criminal history. He has a history of being a rotten person, but he has no criminal history, so it would put him in the leftmost column of the sentencing charts, and that leftmost column is where the sentences are the shortest. It makes sense. If you have a extensive criminal history, you're going to get a much longer sentence than someone who has no criminal history at all. And the more of a criminal history you have, the longer your sentence is likely to be. So for Roger Stone, like most celebrities that you see in the news, you'll see stories about how they face a potentially long sentence. For most of those celebrities, they have no criminal history, so not likely to face anywhere near the sentence that the media is talking about. Stone is facing charges under a section of federal law that involves obstruction of justice. The gist of the indictment against Roger Stone, he faces 7 different counts. One count is for obstructing a proceeding by lying to a congressional committee, and there are 5 specific false statement counts against him, again related to lying to that congressional committee, lying to investigators about what happened related to this Russia investigation. Keep in mind, I think most people agree at this point the Russia investigation kind of was an investigation of nothing, or a nothing burger as some people called it. And as Credico, one of the key witnesses in the case, said, Stone got himself in trouble for lying about something that wasn't illegal. So this is a huge mistake on his part, but the indictment is about that lying, and it's also about witness tampering, where there's this guy, Randy Credico, who I know loosely, a comedian who's got involved in politics, involved with Roger Stone. Credico, Roger Stone had some kind of communication with Credico about this investigation, and Stone was telling Credico to lie, to not talk. He tried to stop Credico from testifying or cooperating with investigators, or get him to testify falsely. In the process of that, at one point, Stone apparently threatened Credico and or his dog, and that is going to come back later to haunt Stone at sentencing, possibly. It could increase the amount of time he spends in a federal prison. So with obstruction of justice charges, the guidelines set forth a base offense level of 14. This is something that goes into the calculation of how much time is somebody going to get. First, you determine the base offense level of the offense, and then you decide, are you going to add anything to the number, or are you going to take anything away from the number? Typically, when somebody makes a plea agreement, they get some kind of reduction in the offense level based on their cooperation. Maybe they assist in other ways. There's certain things that they can do that demonstrate to the court and or the prosecutors, hey, I'm trying to do the right thing here, and the guidelines encourage that by giving a person a lower sentence if they do those things. The other side of that is that there's if you don't, first of all, if you don't do that, you don't get those breaks. If you don't take a deal, early, typically you get a lot of those breaks if you take a deal early. If you make the prosecutors do work, if you make the case take longer, then you're not going to get as much of a break, if any, on that. Another issue is enhancements to your sentence, things that will increase the offense level when we're looking at the chart. And there's a couple of those things that come into play here. The big one here is the apparent threat to Randy Credico's dog, that this could increase Stone's offense level 8 points, which is a huge increase and quite a lot of additional time in prison if the judge decides to apply that. The other thing is whether he substantially interfered with the administration of justice, and the usual way that that's determined, the usual things that come up: stop the prosecution, cause the government to not prosecute an account, or certain things like that that are clearly substantial. Those don't apply here. But one of the key things to look for is whether there was an unnecessary expenditure of government resources. And I think that's what the government is going to argue, is that Stone's lies and Stone's interference with Credico caused them to do additional work that cost the government money, and substantial amount of money. I don't know whether they're going to be able to show that in court. I think that's what they're going to go for, and I think they're going to seek those additional 3 levels for that. So just to be clear, I am not a Roger Stone fan. I am someone who hopes, I would love it if Roger Stone got 20 years in federal prison, or if he got hit by a bus tomorrow, I'd be thrilled. I think the guy is one of the worst people on earth. He brags about being evil. I think it's disgusting that people support a guy. This is one of the things, it's not so bad that Roger Stone himself is evil and brags about himself being a dirty trickster, brags about lying about people, brags about character assassination. And of course, for people who know the story, I am personally a victim of Roger Stone sending absolute and disgusting lies about me to people in my hometown, including my mother. So let's be clear, I do not like Roger Stone. With that said, I'm trying to be objective here and look at the sentencing guidelines. And having looked at the sentencing guidelines, I don't see him getting anywhere near 20 years. What you see on the sentencing chart is he's going to be in the left column, and he's going to be somewhere between 12 and 27, from what I can see in terms of offense level. He would get the 12 if he had cooperated. He would get the 12 if he cooperated, took a plea agreement, cooperated, assisted the government in their investigation, their prosecution. That doesn't seem likely. So we're going to start at 14 and we're going to go up. I think we're pretty clearly going to go up the 8 levels for Stone's threats to Credico and his dog, and that takes him to 22. Whether he gets the extra 3 levels for interfering with the administration of justice, I think it's probably a stretch. I think they were probably going to do the same investigations anyway, so that would leave him around 22. The other thing is you'll see references to, well, he had multiple counts. The way I read the sentencing guidelines, they would all be grouped together, and it wouldn't be that he would be sentenced consecutive. We call it consecutive sentencing. Concurrent sentencing is when everything runs together. Consecutive sentencing is when you take one sentence and you add the other sentences on top, and you end up getting a really long sentence because you got sentenced to 10 years on 5 counts, you get 50 years. I believe that Stone it's considered it's considered all in one group. It's all related to the same thing. So I think he's unlikely to get any kind of consecutive sentencing. He's likely to get one sentence based on this set of offenses. So if I'm right and it goes to level 22, which is my rough guess, could be 25, could be down as low as 14. But if he does get a level 22 sentence, we're looking at 41 to 51 months, somewhere in the ballpark of 3 to 5 years. My guess is that the judge finds him around level 22 and goes to the lower end of the range. So I think Stone is looking at somewhere between 3 and 4 years in federal prison. And then you got to keep in mind that sometimes people get credit for good behavior, things like that. So there's a good chance Roger Stone will be out 3 years after he enters a federal prison. There's also the possibility that Donald Trump will pardon Roger Stone. I think it's a fair chance he would do that after the 2020 election. That he would pardon Manafort, he would pardon Stone. I'm not sure it's hard to read Donald Trump to know what he's going to do. If he does pardon him, then Roger won't see the inside of a federal prison because the pardon would probably come before the sentence, although we'll see. Maybe the judge sentenced him sooner. Stone files an appeal, tries to stay out of prison pending his appeal. We'll see what happens there. But assuming Trump doesn't pardon him, and it doesn't seem likely that there's anything Stone's going to successfully appeal. Appeals usually don't win. I think he's looking at 3 to 5 years, and a ballpark of 3 years inside a federal prison is what's likely to happen to Roger Stone. So for all those people who support him, the dozens of people who showed up where they pretended they have 1,000 people, classic overcounting of the number of supporters. I'm sorry, but it looks like Roger Stone's going to federal prison for a few years. But on the bright side, he's not going for 20. Thank you for watching.